I never imagined that Christmas Eve would be the night my family showed their true colors. Walking into my parents' house with Sarah and our two kids, Emma and Noah, I felt that familiar warmth of coming home for the holidays. The massive Douglas fir sparkled with decades of collected ornaments and presents spilled out from underneath in colorful piles. My 6-year-old daughter immediately ran toward the tree, while 4-year-old Noah toddled behind her, both searching for their names on the gift tags. But as I watched them circle the tree twice, then 3 times, my stomach began to sink. Emma looked up at me with confused eyes and whispered that she couldn't find any presents with her name or Noah's name anywhere. My heart started racing as I knelt down beside the tree, frantically searching through the dozens of wrapped packages. Every single tag bore the names of my brother Derek's 3 children, Madison, Tyler, and Sophia. Expensive electronics designer clothes, elaborate toy sets, all for Derek's kids, nothing for mine. I found my mother Linda in the kitchen arranging cookies on her finest china platter. The scent of her famous sugar cookies filled the air, but for the first time in my life, that smell made me feel sick. "Mom," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think there might be some kind of mistake. Emma and Noah can't find any presents under the tree with their names on them." Linda looked up from her cookie arrangement, and instead of the concern I expected, she gave me a smile that felt like ice water in my veins. "Oh, that's not a mistake, Jake. We decided not to waste money on your side of the family this year." The words hit me like a physical blow. Waste money? Mom, these are your grandchildren we're talking about. Before she could respond, my father Robert walked into the kitchen, his reading glasses perched on his nose and a satisfied expression on his face. "Your mother's right, son. Derek's been contributing so much more to these family gatherings lately. He brings the wine, pays for the catering when we need it, even helped us fix the roof last spring. It just makes sense to focus our gift giving where it's most appreciated." I felt my world tilting sideways. "Most appreciated, Dad, I bring homemade desserts every year. I help with the yard work whenever you ask. I drive 2 hours each way to be here for every holiday." "Well, yes," Robert said, adjusting his glasses. "But Derek's contributions are more substantial. Running 3 successful businesses really shows initiative." That's when Derek himself appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expensive suit perfectly tailored and his smile dripping with smugness. He'd clearly been listening to our conversation. "Come on, little brother. Be grateful we even invited you this year. Not everyone gets to enjoy Christmas dinner at the family estate." The casual cruelty in his voice made my hands clench into fists. Sarah appeared beside me, having overheard everything. Her face was pale with shock and anger. "How could you do this to children?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. Emma and Noah don't understand why their cousins get presents and they don't. They're 6 and 4 years old." Linda waved dismissively. "Children need to learn about the real world eventually. Some families do better than others. That's just life." Derek leaned against the doorframe, completely relaxed. Maybe if Jake had chosen a more lucrative career path instead of playing around with teaching high schoolers, this wouldn't be an issue. The word stung because I knew Derek had always resented that I'd chosen education over business. While he chased profits, I'd dedicated my life to shaping young minds. But apparently that counted for nothing in my family's eyes. Robert nodded approvingly at Derek. "Your brother understands the value of financial success, Jake. Perhaps this will motivate you to think bigger about your future." "My future," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I love my job. I'm making a difference in kids' lives every single day." "And look where that's gotten you," Linda said with a bitter laugh. "You drive a 10-year-old Honda while Derek just bought his second BMW." Sarah's hand found mine, squeezing tightly. Through the kitchen window, I could see my children still searching hopefully around the tree, while Derek's kids gleefully examined their mountain of gifts. But then Derek said something that made my blood freeze. Besides, we took a family vote about this months ago. Everyone agreed it made perfect sense. A family vote? Sarah whispered. Well, not everyone. Derek corrected himself with another smug grin. We didn't include you two, obviously. But Mom, Dad, Uncle Tommy, Aunt Margaret, even Cousin Brian thought it was the right call. We've been planning this for weeks. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of children's laughter from the living room, Derek's children's laughter. My children had gone quiet, probably sitting somewhere feeling confused and hurt. As the full scope of this betrayal sank in, I realized this wasn't just favoritism or thoughtlessness. This was a calculated effort to humiliate me and my family during what should have been the most joyful time of the year. The conspiracy involved nearly every adult in my extended family, all of whom had agreed that my children didn't deserve the same treatment as Derek's children. Rage was building in my chest like a fire I couldn't control, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't let Derek see how deeply this was affecting me. Instead, I walked back into the living room where Emma and Noah sat quietly on the couch, watching their cousins play with brand new tablets and gaming systems. "Why don't we have presents, Daddy?" Emma asked in a small voice that broke my heart. "We'll figure that out, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to hug both my children. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. But as I stood up, something caught my eye. Derek's youngest son, Tyler, was unwrapping what looked like an expensive gaming system, the latest PlayStation with multiple controllers and games. The wrapping paper was scattered around his feet, but something white was still attached to the box. I walked over and picked up the receipt that had been taped to the gift. At first glance, it seemed normal, a purchase from Best Buy for $899. But then I looked closer at the credit card information printed on the bottom. My heart stopped. The last 4 digits of the credit card number were 1274. I knew those numbers by heart because they belonged to my Visa card, the one in my wallet, the one Derek shouldn't have access to. With growing disbelief, I examined the receipt more carefully. The cardholder name was listed as J. Morrison, Jake Morrison. That was me. But I had never purchased this gaming system. I had never even been to this particular Best Buy location. My hands started shaking as I looked around for more evidence. Madison was playing with a brand new smartphone that must have cost at least $600. I found the receipt in her discarded gift bag and felt sick when I saw the same credit card digits. Sophia had received an expensive jewelry box and matching necklace set, again purchased with my credit card according to the receipt. I gathered up several receipts, my mind racing as I tried to understand what I was seeing. Derek was still in the kitchen with my parents, probably gloating about their successful humiliation of my family. "Sarah," I called softly. She came over immediately, seeing the distress on my face. "What's wrong?" she whispered. I showed her the receipts. "Look at these credit card numbers. These are from my Visa card, but I never bought any of these gifts." Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the numbers. "Jake, that's impossible. How would Derek have your credit card information?" "I don't know, but we're going to find out right now." I marched back into the kitchen, clutching the receipts in my hand. Derek was helping himself to more wine, while my parents continued arranging food for dinner. "Derek," I said, my voice deadly calm, "we need to talk." He turned around with that same infuriating smile. "What now, little brother, still upset about the gift situation? Maybe next year you can contribute more to the family and earn some consideration." Instead of responding, I held up the receipt for the gaming system. "Interesting. This one has my name on the receipt." The smile disappeared from Derek's face instantly. The color drained from his cheeks as he stared at the paper in my hand. "What are you talking about?" Linda asked, but her voice sounded uncertain for the first time that evening. "I'm talking about the fact that every single one of these expensive gifts Derek bought for his children was purchased with my credit card," I said, raising my voice so the whole kitchen could hear me. "My credit card that I've never let him use. My credit card that should be in my wallet right now." I pulled out my wallet and confirmed that yes, my Visa card was exactly where it should be. So, unless Derek can explain how he managed to use my credit card while it was in my possession, we have a very serious problem here. The room went completely silent. Robert's face went pale. Linda dropped the cookie she was holding. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. "Derek," Sarah said, her voice sharp with accusation. "How did you get Jake's credit card information?" I don't know what you're talking about," Derek stammered, but his guilty expression told a very different story. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. "Well, I guess we should call the credit card company and report fraud then. And probably the police, since this looks like identity theft." "Wait," Derek shouted, panic flooding his voice. "Don't call anyone. Let me explain." But before he could say another word, I noticed something else. Derek's hands were shaking, and his face had gone from pale to green. He looked like a man who knew his entire world was about to collapse. Because if Derek had been using my credit card without permission, that wasn't just a family dispute anymore. That was a federal crime, and suddenly all of his recent financial success was starting to make a lot more sense. "Explain what exactly," I demanded, still holding my phone ready to dial. "Explain how you committed credit card fraud. Explain how you've been stealing from my family." Derek's expensive suit suddenly seemed like a costume he was wearing to play a part. His hands trembled as he reached for the kitchen counter to steady himself. "It's not what you think," he said weakly. "Then tell me what it is," I said. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been using my personal information to make purchases without my knowledge or consent. That's called identity theft, Derek. It's a felony." Sarah was already on her own phone calling our bank. "Yes, I need to report suspicious activity on our Visa account," she said to the customer service representative. "Someone has been making unauthorized purchases." Linda and Robert stood frozen, watching their golden child's facade crumble before their eyes. "Derek Michael Morrison," Robert said slowly, using Derek's full name the way he had when we were children in trouble. "What have you done?" Derek's composure finally shattered completely. Tears started streaming down his face as he collapsed into one of the kitchen chairs. "My businesses are failing," he whispered. "Everything's falling apart. The restaurant chain lost money 3 quarters in a row. The real estate investments went bad when the market shifted. The consulting firm never really took off the way I projected." "So, you decided to steal from your brother," Sarah said incredulously, still on hold with the bank. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Derek sobbed. "It started small. I just needed to buy a few things to keep up appearances at business meetings. Clients need to see success, you know. If they think you're struggling, they won't trust you with their money." I felt like I was watching a stranger. The confident, successful businessman I'd known my whole life was revealing himself to be a desperate fraud. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. Derek wiped his eyes with his expensive suit sleeve. "About 8 months, maybe 9. I memorized your credit card number when you left your wallet on the kitchen counter during Easter dinner. I thought I'd just use it once or twice to get through a rough patch." 8 months, Linda gasped. "You've been stealing from your brother for 8 months. "I kept telling myself I'd pay it back," Derek continued. "Once the businesses turned around, I was going to replace every penny. You have to believe me, Jake. I never wanted to hurt you." Sarah got through to our bank representative and was now reading off account numbers and transaction dates. I could hear the customer service person typing rapidly on their keyboard. "Derek," Robert said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "How much money are we talking about?" Derek's silence was answer enough. I grabbed another receipt from the pile, this one for Sophia's jewelry set. "This purchase was made 3 days ago for $647. The gaming system was $899 last week. Madison's phone was $612 2 weeks ago." I kept reading off amounts, my voice getting louder with each number. Just from these receipts, you've spent over $3,000 of my money on Christmas gifts for your children." "Sir," Sarah said to the bank representative, her face growing paler by the second, "can you please read me the total amount of questionable charges from the past 8 months?" She listened for a long moment, and then her face went completely white. "How much?" I asked. Sarah looked at me with horror in her eyes. $47,836. The kitchen went dead silent. Linda actually gasped out loud. Robert sank into a chair like his legs could no longer support him. $47,000. I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Derek, you stole almost $50,000 from my family." Derek was crying openly now. "I was going to pay it back. I swear on my children's lives I was going to pay every penny back." "With what money?" I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "Your businesses are failing. You just admitted you're broke." "Sir, there's more," Sarah said quietly to the bank representative. "Can you check if there are any loan applications or credit inquiries associated with this card?" Another long pause. Sarah's face somehow managed to go even whiter. "Jake," she said slowly, "there's a personal loan application that was approved last month for $25,000 in your name, using your social security number and employment information." I felt like the floor was dissolving beneath my feet. "A loan? Derek, did you take out a loan in my name?" Derek's sobbing intensified. "The Christmas gifts were just the tip of the iceberg. I've been using your information for months. Credit cards, store accounts, even a car lease that I canceled before you found out. And yes, there was a loan. I needed cash flow to keep my restaurant locations open just a little longer." Robert stood up slowly, his face red with fury. "Derek, do you understand what you've done? You haven't just stolen from your brother. You've destroyed his credit rating. You've put his family's financial future at risk. You've committed multiple felonies." "I know," Derek screamed. "Don't you think I know that I've been sick about it for months, but once I started, I couldn't figure out how to stop without losing everything." Linda had been silent throughout this entire revelation, but now she spoke up in a voice I'd never heard before, cold and disgusted. "So instead of losing your pride, you decided to destroy your brother's life." Derek looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. "I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. I thought if I could just get the businesses back on track." "There's something else," Sarah said grimly, still on the phone with the bank. "They're saying there are several other active accounts that show signs of fraudulent activity. Store credit cards that were opened without authorization. A home equity line of credit application that was submitted but not approved. Derek, exactly how many different ways have you stolen Jake's identity?" Derek's silence stretched on until I thought I might lose my mind. "All of them," he finally whispered. "Every way I could think of." The revelation hit the room like a bomb blast. Robert's face turned purple with rage while Linda gripped the kitchen counter so hard her knuckles went white. But Derek wasn't finished destroying our family's Christmas Eve. "There's something else you need to know," Derek said between sobs. "About Dad's retirement account." Robert went very still. "What about my retirement account? Remember when you signed those power of attorney papers 6 months ago, when you were in the hospital for your heart procedure and needed someone to handle your finances temporarily?" Robert's face went from purple to ash gray. "Derek, tell me you didn't." "I never revoked the power of attorney like I was supposed to," Derek admitted. "And when my restaurant chain needed an emergency cash injection to avoid bankruptcy, I borrowed from your retirement fund." "Borrowed?" Linda shrieked. "You mean you stole from your father's life savings?" "I was going to put it back," Derek insisted, but his voice carried no conviction anymore. "The restaurant was supposed to turn profitable by the end of the year. I thought I could replace the money before anyone noticed." Robert stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "How much, Derek? How much of my retirement did you steal? Derek's voice was barely audible. $38,000. Linda made a sound like she'd been physically struck. Robert grabbed the edge of the kitchen table to keep from falling over. $38,000, Robert repeated slowly. Derek, that's nearly half of everything I've saved for 43 years. That's my security. That's your mother's security. That's the money we need to live on when we can't work anymore. I know, Dad. I know how terrible this is. But I thought I could fix it. Fix it with what I demanded. You just admitted your businesses are failing. Where were you planning to get $75,000 to pay back Dad and me? Derek's silence was the most damning answer he could have given. That's when we heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see Derek's wife, Kelly, getting out of her silver minivan with their 3 children trailing behind her. She was carrying several gift bags and looked happy, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. Kelly can't find out like this, Derek said desperately. Please let me tell her privately. The kids don't need to see their mother fall apart. The kids don't need to see their mother fall apart, Sarah repeated incredulously. What about my kids? Derek. What about Emma and Noah, who spent this entire evening wondering why they weren't worth buying Christmas presents for while you were showering your children with gifts bought with their father's stolen money? Kelly's voice carried in from the front door as she helped the children with their coats. Sorry we're late. Traffic was terrible and Tyler insisted on stopping for gas station snacks. Derek, Linda said in a voice like ice, you are going to march out there and tell your wife the truth right now, every word of it, because if you don't, I will. Mom, please. Don't you dare call me Mom right now, Linda snapped. You've disgraced this family. You've committed crimes against your own brother and father. You've destroyed the trust of everyone who ever loved you. You don't deserve to be called anyone's son. Robert was still staring at the wall, probably calculating how many years he'd have to keep working to rebuild his retirement savings. At 68 years old, losing that much money wasn't just a financial setback. It was potentially catastrophic. Kelly walked into the kitchen with her usual bright smile. Merry Christmas, everyone. The kids are so excited about. She stopped mid-sentence, taking in the scene before her. Derek crying, the adults all looking stricken tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. What's going on? She asked slowly. Derek looked at me pleadingly, but I had no sympathy left for him. Sarah was still on the phone with our bank working to freeze accounts and file fraud reports. The evidence of his crimes was scattered across the kitchen table in the form of receipts and bank statements. Kelly, Derek said miserably, I need to tell you something. We should probably sit down. Tell me what, Derek, you're scaring me. Linda stepped forward. Kelly, dear, your husband has been stealing money from Jake and Robert for months. He's committed identity theft, credit card fraud, and embezzlement. He used Jake's credit card to buy all those expensive gifts your children just unwrapped. Kelly's face went through several emotions at once: confusion, disbelief, and then dawning horror as she looked at Derek's guilty expression. That's not possible, she whispered. Derek's businesses are doing great. We just bought the new house. We got the kids into private school. We're planning the trip to Europe next summer. Kelly, Derek said gently. The businesses haven't been doing great. They've been failing for over a year. Everything we've been living is a lie built on money I stole from my family. Kelly sank into a kitchen chair like her legs had given out. A lie, Derek? What are you talking about? You just got promoted to regional manager at the consulting firm. I got fired from the consulting firm 4 months ago, Derek admitted. The restaurant chain is in bankruptcy proceedings. The real estate investments were a scam. I lost everything we put into them. But the house... Kelly's voice was getting smaller and smaller. We're 3 months behind on mortgage payments, Derek said. The bank sent a foreclosure notice last week. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of children's laughter from the living room and Kelly's sharp, panicked breathing. Foreclosure, she repeated. Derek, Are you telling me we're about to lose our home?" Derek nodded miserably. Kelly looked around the room at all of us, her eyes wide with shock and growing anger. "And you've been stealing from your family to hide this from me, from our children." "I was trying to protect you," Derek said weakly. "I thought I could fix everything before you found out." "Protect me?" Kelly's voice rose to a near shout. "You've been lying to me for months. You've made me an unknowing accomplice to theft. You've put our children's father in legal jeopardy." She stood up abruptly and pulled out her own cell phone. "I'm calling my sister. The kids and I are staying there tonight. And Derek, don't even think about coming home until you figure out how to fix this nightmare you've created." As Kelly stormed out to collect her children, Derek looked around the kitchen at the ruins of his family relationships. Robert wouldn't even look at him. Linda was crying quietly. Sarah was still on the phone with our bank, and I was staring at the man who had been my brother, wondering if I'd ever really known him at all. But the worst part was still to come because Derek hadn't told us the full scope of what he'd done. And when the complete truth finally came out, it would be even more devastating than any of us imagined. As Kelly gathered her children and prepared to leave, I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of every receipt, every piece of evidence of Derek's crimes. Sarah was still coordinating with our bank, but I knew we'd need documentation for the police and potentially for court proceedings. "What are you doing?" Derek asked nervously as I photographed the receipts. "Building a case," I said coldly. "You've committed multiple felonies, Derek. This isn't going to just go away because you're sorry." Robert had been quiet since learning about his depleted retirement fund, but now he spoke up in a voice I'd never heard before, cold and distant. "Derek, I need you to give me complete access to all accounts that have any connection to my power of attorney. I need to see exactly what you've done with my money." "Dad." "Don't call me that," Robert said sharply. "You've forfeited the right to call me that. Now get me those account statements." Derek pulled out his laptop with shaking hands and started logging into various financial websites. As the numbers appeared on screen, Robert's face grew more and more grim. "You didn't just take $38,000, Robert said after several minutes. "You've been moving money in and out of my accounts for months. Some of it you paid back, but then you took more. The total amount you've touched is over $60,000. "But I replaced most of it," Derek protested. "With what money?" "Oh, that's right, with money you stole from your brother." Just then, Uncle Tommy and Aunt Margaret arrived for dinner, walking in through the back door as they always did during family gatherings. They stopped short when they saw the devastation in the kitchen. "What in the world is going on here?" Uncle Tommy asked, taking in Derek's tear-stained face and the general atmosphere of catastrophe. I looked at Derek. "Do you want to tell them or should I?" Derek closed his eyes in defeat. "Uncle Tommy, Aunt Margaret. I need to tell you something. That $15,000 I borrowed from you 6 months ago, I can't pay it back. My businesses have failed and I've been stealing money from Jake and Dad to try to keep everything afloat." Aunt Margaret gasped. "Stealing money? Derek, what are you talking about?" "Identity theft," Sarah said grimly. "Finally off the phone with the bank. Credit card fraud. Embezzlement. He's been using Jake's personal information to make purchases and take out loans for almost a year." Uncle Tommy's face turned red. "That $15,000 was our vacation fund, Derek. We trusted you because you're family." "I know," Derek said miserably. "I'm going to find a way to pay you back, I promise." "With what money?" Uncle Tommy demanded. "You just admitted you're broke and have been committing crimes to hide it." Aunt Margaret pulled out her phone. "Tommy, we need to call Brian. If Derek's been doing this to his own brother and father, what do you think he's done with that business loan Brian co-signed for him?" Derek's face went even paler, which I hadn't thought was possible. "Please don't call Brian." "Why not?" I asked suspiciously. "Because the loan defaulted 3 weeks ago," Derek admitted in a whisper. "Brian's credit score has already taken a hit and the bank is going after him for the full amount since I can't pay." Uncle Tommy stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. You mean Brian is financially liable for your business failures? Derek, that boy, just bought his first house. He's got a new baby. You've destroyed his financial future. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Derek sobbed. But you knew it was happening, Aunt Margaret said accusingly. You knew Brian would be held responsible for that loan, and you let it happen anyway. Sarah looked at me with growing concern. Jake, if Derek has been this systematic about defrauding family members, we need to warn everyone. Who else might he have targeted? Before Derek could answer, my cousin Brian walked through the front door with his wife Lisa and their 6-month-old daughter. They were laughing about something as they came into the kitchen, but their smiles died when they saw the scene before them. What's wrong? Brian asked immediately. Uncle Robert, you look like you've seen a ghost. Brian, Derek said desperately, I was just about to call you. Call me about what? I looked at Derek with disgust. Tell him. Derek's voice broke completely as he spoke. The business loan you co-signed for me defaulted. The bank is going after you for the full amount. $47,000. Brian went very still. That's not possible. You said the business was doing great. You said you just needed the loan for temporary cash flow. I lied, Derek whispered. Everything I told you was a lie. The business failed months ago. I've been using the loan money to try to cover my debts and maintain the illusion that I was still successful. Lisa looked between Brian and Derek with growing panic. Brian, what does this mean? It means we're going to lose our house, Brian said quietly, sinking into a chair. $47,000 on top of our mortgage and the baby's medical bills from her NICU stay. Lisa, we can't handle that kind of debt. Derek was crying so hard he could barely speak. Brian, I'm so sorry. I thought I could turn everything around before the loan came due. I thought I could pay it off without you ever having to worry about it. You thought, Brian repeated incredulously. Derek, you gambled with my family's future, my daughter's future. How could you do this to us? Because he's a selfish coward who only thinks about himself, Linda said harshly. Brian, Lisa, I'm so sorry. If we'd known what Derek was doing, we would have stopped him. But Derek still wasn't finished destroying our family. As he sat there sobbing, something about his behavior was bothering me. The way he kept checking his phone. The way his panic seemed to be about more than just being caught stealing. Derek, I said slowly, is there something else you haven't told us because you keep looking at your phone like you're expecting bad news? Derek's face went from pale to green. There might be some people looking for me. What kind of people? The kind of people you don't want to keep waiting, Derek said miserably. Robert stood up slowly. Derek Morrison, what have you done now? Derek's voice was barely audible when he answered. I've been gambling online to try to make back the money I stole. Sports betting, poker games, stock options. I thought if I could just win big, once I could pay everyone back and no one would have to know. How much do you owe? Sarah asked, though her voice suggested she didn't really want to know the answer. $63,000, Derek whispered, to some very dangerous people. And they expect payment by tomorrow. The kitchen fell into stunned silence as the full scope of Derek's destruction became clear. He hadn't just stolen from his family. He'd put all of us in physical danger by involving loan sharks and illegal gambling operations. And tomorrow was Christmas Day. The silence in the kitchen was deafening as the reality of Derek's complete confession sank in. $63,000 to dangerous people. Payment due tomorrow. Christmas Day. But instead of feeling more panic, I felt something unexpected. Clarity. For the first time all evening, I knew exactly what needed to happen. Sarah, I said calmly, are you still on hold with the fraud department? Yes, they're preparing the paperwork for the police report. Good. Ask them to stay on the line. I turned to my father. Dad, do you have the contact information for your bank? Robert nodded, still in shock, but following my lead. Call them right now. Report the unauthorized access to your retirement account and request an immediate investigation. I looked at Uncle Tommy and Aunt Margaret. You two need to document everything Derek told you about the $15,000 loan. Write down dates, amounts, what he told you the money was for. Jake, Derek said desperately, what are you doing? I'm taking control of this situation before it gets any worse. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. You see, Derek, while you were busy destroying our family, I was busy being a responsible adult. And responsible adults don't just react to crimes, they document them. I held up my phone. I've been recording everything you've said for the past 30 minutes. Every confession, every admission of guilt, every detail about your fraud schemes. All of it legally admissible in court. Derek's face went white. You recorded me. I started recording the moment you admitted to using my credit card. Because unlike you, I think ahead. I looked around the room at my family members. And unlike you, I've been preparing for this conversation for months. What do you mean? Linda asked. Sarah smiled for the first time all evening. Tell them, Jake. I sat down across from Derek and looked him directly in the eyes. I've suspected something was wrong since August. My credit monitoring service sent me alerts about inquiries and new accounts. So I started investigating. Derek's mouth fell open. I hired a private investigator in September. I continued. I have detailed reports about your business failures, your gambling debts, your fraudulent activities. I know about every transaction, every forged document, every lie you've told to banks and creditors. I pulled out a thick manila folder from my briefcase. The briefcase Derek probably thought just contained Christmas gifts for the kids. This folder contains copies of all the evidence the private investigator gathered. Bank records, credit reports, business filings, even photos of you meeting with loan sharks at that casino in Atlantic City. Derek looked like he was going to vomit. The only thing I didn't know was how deep the family connections went. I didn't realize you'd stolen from Dad's retirement or destroyed Brian's credit. Those were bonuses I discovered tonight, thanks to your confessions. Robert was staring at me with a mixture of amazement and pride. You've known about this for months. I've been building a case for months, I corrected. See, Derek always underestimated me because I'm just a teacher. But teachers are researchers, Dad. We know how to investigate, how to document, how to build evidence-based arguments. Sarah opened her own folder. And while Jake was investigating Derek's crimes, I was working with financial advisors and lawyers to protect our family's assets. Every account Derek accessed has been monitored and secured. You knew too, Aunt Margaret asked Sarah. We've been working together since October, Sarah said. We knew this confrontation was coming. We just didn't know when or where it would happen. Christmas Eve was actually perfect timing because it got the whole family together to hear Derek's confession at once. I stood up and walked over to Derek, who was now shaking uncontrollably. You want to know the really beautiful part of this, big brother? While you were stealing my identity and ruining my credit, I was quietly building evidence that will not only get me every penny back, but will send you to prison for a very long time. Jake, please. The private investigator also documented your gambling activities and your connections to illegal betting operations. So when the FBI gets involved, and they will get involved, they'll have everything they need to pursue charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Derek started hyperventilating. The FBI? Oh yes. When identity theft crosses state lines and involves multiple financial institutions, it becomes a federal case. And thanks to your gambling debts, we're also talking about organized crime connections. I sat back down and smiled at Derek with genuine satisfaction. You see, Derek, while you were playing desperate criminal, I was playing chess. Every move you made, I was 3 steps ahead. Every account you compromised, I was already monitoring. Every lie you told, I already knew the truth. Sarah held up her phone. The bank has already reversed all fraudulent charges and restored our credit rating. Jake's score is actually higher now than it was before Derek started his scheme, because we've proven we're victims of identity theft rather than irresponsible borrowers. Robert looked at me with something approaching awe. You planned all of this? We planned for justice, I said simply. Derek made his choices. We just made sure there would be consequences. Derek was crying openly again, but this time it wasn't just guilt, it was terror. What about the people I owe money to? He whispered. They're expecting payment tomorrow. I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore, Derek. You created this mess. You deal with it. But they'll hurt me. They might hurt my family. Then you'd better figure out how to protect them, I said coldly, because you sure didn't worry about protecting mine when you were stealing from my children's college fund. Uncle Tommy looked at me with respect. Jake, what happens next? Next, Derek goes to prison, I said matter-of-factly. The evidence is overwhelming. The confessions are recorded. The federal crimes are documented. There's no scenario where he doesn't serve significant time. Derek looked around the room desperately, but he found no sympathy anywhere. Not from his parents, not from his extended family, not from his brother he'd betrayed. But there is one small mercy I'm prepared to offer, I said finally. Derek looked up hopefully. If you cooperate fully with the authorities, if you provide information about the gambling operation and the loan sharks, if you help the FBI build cases against the people who facilitated your crimes, I might be willing to recommend a lighter sentence. You would do that, Derek whispered. Not for you, I said firmly. For Kelly and your children. They don't deserve to suffer because their father is a criminal. Derek nodded frantically. Yes, I'll cooperate with everything. I'll tell them whatever they want to know. Good, I said, standing up and pulling out my phone, because they're already on their way. Derek's face went white. What do you mean? I mean the FBI agents assigned to this case have been waiting for my call. I said, dialing a number. Agent Martinez, this is Jake Morrison. Yes, he confessed to everything. You can come in now. Through the kitchen window, we could see black SUVs pulling into the driveway. Derek looked at me with a mixture of terror and strange admiration. You really did think of everything, didn't you? I told you, Derek, teachers are researchers. And you just became my most successful research project. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen making coffee on a peaceful Saturday morning, watching through the window as Emma and Noah played in the backyard with their cousins, Madison, Tyler, and Sophia. The children's laughter filled the air, a sound that had been missing from our family gatherings for far too long. Derek had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for identity theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. True to his word, he had cooperated fully with the FBI's investigation into the illegal gambling operation, helping them shut down a multi-state crime ring. His cooperation had indeed earned him a lighter sentence than the 10 years he could have received. More importantly, his cooperation had protected our family from any retaliation from the dangerous people he owed money to. The FBI had rolled up the entire operation, and the loan sharks were now facing their own federal charges. The financial recovery had been better than I'd dared to hope. Not only were all of Derek's fraudulent charges reversed, but the civil lawsuit against his business assets had recovered nearly $40,000 that was distributed among his victims. My credit rating was fully restored. Uncle Tommy and Aunt Margaret got their vacation money back, and Brian's loan obligation was forgiven when the bank accepted that he was a victim of fraud rather than a willing participant. Most surprisingly, Robert's retirement account had been fully restored through a combination of recovered funds and a settlement with the bank that had failed to properly verify the power of attorney transactions. At 79 years old, he now had more retirement security than he'd had before Derek's crimes began. Kelly had filed for divorce immediately after Derek's arrest, and it had been finalized 3 months ago. She'd found a good job as a school administrator and was raising the children as a single mother with grace and determination. We saw them every weekend, and the kids were adjusting better than anyone had expected. The most profound change, however, had been in my parents. Linda and Robert had entered family therapy immediately after Derek's arrest, determined to understand how their favoritism had contributed to the family's dysfunction. They'd worked hard to rebuild their relationship with me and Sarah and had become the loving, equitable grandparents that Emma and Noah deserved. This morning's coffee was particularly special because it was the first Christmas morning in our family's new tradition. Instead of gathering at my parents' house with its memories of betrayal and favoritism, we'd started hosting Christmas at our own home. Everyone was invited. Linda and Robert, Uncle Tommy, and Aunt Margaret, Brian and Lisa with their baby daughter, and Kelly with her 3 children. "Dad, come see what Santa brought," Emma called from the living room. I walked into our living room to find all 6 children gathered around our tree, examining presents with equal excitement. There were no favorites here, no disparities based on their parents' financial status. Every child received the same number of gifts, chosen with love and care, rather than as displays of wealth or status. Kelly was helping Tyler open a particularly stubborn package, while Sarah distributed coffee to the adults. Brian was showing his toddler daughter how to unwrap gifts without tearing the paper, and Uncle Tommy was reading the instructions for Madison's new science kit. "Jake," Robert said quietly, approaching me with his own coffee mug. "I need to say something." I looked at my father, this man who had spent most of my adult life treating me like a disappointment compared to my successful businessman brother. "What's that, Dad?" "I've been thinking about what you did 6 months ago. The investigation. The planning, the way you protected this family even when we didn't deserve protection." He paused, struggling with emotions that were clearly difficult for him to express. "I realized something important." "What's that?" "You didn't just outthink Derek. You didn't just solve a crime or recover stolen money." Robert's voice was thick with pride and regret. "You saved this family. Not just financially, but spiritually. You forced us to confront our failures and become better people." I felt my throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "For 40 years, I measured success by the wrong metrics," Robert continued. "I thought wealth and business achievements were what mattered. But watching you handle this crisis with wisdom, patience, and integrity, that's when I realized who my real successful son is." Linda joined our conversation, having overheard Robert's words. "Jake, we failed you terribly for so many years. We let our misguided priorities damage our relationship with you and Sarah and the children. Can you ever forgive us?" Looking around the room at the children playing together happily at Kelly, slowly rebuilding her life at Brian and Lisa, no longer worried about financial ruin at Uncle Tommy, and Aunt Margaret planning the vacation they'd thought they'd lost forever, I felt something I hadn't expected: complete peace. "You know what I've learned this year?" I said to my parents. "Family isn't about being perfect. It's about facing your mistakes and choosing to do better." Sarah appeared beside me with her own coffee, slipping her hand into mine. "It's about protecting the people you love even when they haven't protected you. And it's about teaching our children that real success isn't measured in bank accounts or business achievements," I added, watching Emma help little Sophia open a gift. "It's measured in character integrity and how we treat the people who matter most." Linda wiped tears from her eyes. "Derek is going to be devastated that he missed this Christmas." "Derek made his choices," I said simply. "He'll have to live with the consequences. But his children don't have to suffer for their father's mistakes. They're part of this family, and they always will be." Kelly looked up from where she was helping Tyler with his new tablet. "Jake, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us." "You don't need to thank me," I said. "You're family." As the morning progressed and the present opening gave way to cooking Christmas dinner together, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this point. Derek's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also forced our family to confront truths we'd been avoiding for decades. The favoritism that had poisoned family gatherings was gone, replaced by genuine equality and love. The financial pressure that had driven Derek to crime had been relieved by honest conversations about money and realistic expectations. Most importantly, the children were growing up in an environment where their worth wasn't determined by their parents' achievements or bank balances. "Uncle Jake," Madison said, tugging on my sleeve. "Mom says you're the one who made sure we could still have Christmas, even though Daddy had to go away." I knelt down to her level, looking into eyes that held Derek's features, but none of his selfishness. Madison, your daddy made some very bad choices that hurt a lot of people. But that doesn't mean you and Tyler and Sophia are bad. It doesn't mean you don't deserve love and Christmas presents and family dinners. Will Daddy ever come back? She asked quietly. Someday, I said honestly. And when he does, he'll be a different person. Someone who's learned from his mistakes and wants to do better. Until then, you have all of us to take care of you. Madison smiled and ran back to play with the other children. As I stood up, Sarah squeezed my hand. Any regrets about how it all played out? I thought about Derek sitting in a federal prison somewhere, probably eating Christmas dinner alone in a cafeteria. I thought about the years of family therapy ahead of us, the ongoing work of rebuilding trust and creating new traditions. I thought about the children who would grow up with their father in prison and the conversations we'd have to have about choices and consequences. No regrets, I said finally. Justice was served, our family was protected, and everyone learned that actions have consequences whether you're a successful businessman or a high school teacher. Speaking of which, Robert said, joining our conversation again. I have some news to share. Everyone gathered around as Robert pulled out an official-looking letter. The school board voted unanimously last week, he announced with pride in his voice. Jake has been promoted to principal of Jefferson High School effective next fall. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Emma and Noah started jumping up and down, not entirely sure what a principal was, but understanding that it was something good. They said they were impressed by Jake's leadership skills and his ability to handle complex, sensitive situations with wisdom and integrity. Linda added, beaming with maternal pride. Sarah kissed my cheek. Principal Morrison, I like the sound of that. As the celebration continued around me, I felt a profound sense of completion. The boy who had always been seen as the unsuccessful son, the disappointment, the one who wasn't worth buying Christmas presents for, had become the man who saved his family and earned recognition for his true calling. But more than that, I had learned something invaluable about the nature of real success. It wasn't about accumulating wealth or achieving status. It was about standing up for what's right, protecting the people you love, and helping others learn from their mistakes. Derek had spent years chasing the wrong kind of success, and it had destroyed him. But in destroying himself, he had inadvertently given our family the opportunity to discover what really mattered. As we sat down for Christmas dinner, I looked around the table at faces filled with genuine love and gratitude, rather than the forced politeness and underlying resentment that had characterized our family gatherings for so many years. Before we eat, I said, raising my glass of sparkling cider, I want to propose a toast. Everyone raised their glasses, even the children with their cups of milk. To second chances, I said. To the courage to face our mistakes and the wisdom to learn from them. To the understanding that family isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing to love and protect each other even when it's difficult. To family, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. To family, everyone echoed. As we began passing dishes around the table and the conversation turned to lighter topics, I felt Emma tug on my sleeve. Daddy, she whispered, this is the best Christmas ever. I smiled and kissed the top of her head. Yes, sweetheart, it really is. And as the afternoon wore on, filled with laughter games and the kind of genuine family bonding that had been missing from our lives for so long, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most difficult circumstances. Derek's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been the catalyst for transformation that our family desperately needed. True success, I had learned, isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you protect, what you build, and what you leave behind for the next generation. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between protecting your family and protecting someone you love who was making destructive decisions? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about how you balance justice and mercy when dealing with family conflicts. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about family redemption and the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult. And don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that real success is measured not in dollars but in character. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the greatest victories come not from getting what we want, but from protecting what truly matters. Until next time, may your families be blessed with love, honesty, and the wisdom to choose what's right over what's easy.